For more than 2,000 years, there was a civilization on the edge of Mesopotamia that fought the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and the Assyrians to a standstill, sacked the greatest cities of its age, and carried off some of the most famous monuments in the ancient world as war trophies. It spoke a language related to no other on earth. It worshipped gods no one else worshipped. And it outlasted nearly every empire that tried to destroy it. Yet today, almost no one has heard of it. This is the civilization of Elam, the great forgotten rival of Mesopotamia, and the deepest root of what would one day become Iran. Most people, when they think of ancient Iran, think of the Persians, of Cyrus the Great and the vast Persian Empire. But the Persians were latecomers. Long before they arrived, the land of Elam had already been a center of power for over 2,000 years. To understand where Persia came from, you have to start with the people the Persians built on top of: the Elamites. So who were they? The Elamites lived in the southwest of what is now Iran, in a region of two very different landscapes. There was the lowland plain around the city of Susa, hot and flat, much like neighboring Mesopotamia. And there were the rugged highlands of the Zagros Mountains, cooler and higher, around the city of Anshan. This split between lowland and highland shaped Elamite history. Their kingdom was really a partnership between the plain and the mountains, and Elamite kings often proudly held titles tying them to both regions. When the lowlands were threatened, the highlands gave shelter and strength. That geography helped Elam survive blows that would have ended other states. Elam emerged as one of the world's early civilizations, with roots stretching back before 3000 BCE, around the same time the first cities were rising in Sumer next door. The two regions were neighbors and rivals from the very beginning. They traded constantly because Mesopotamia was rich in grain but poor in raw materials, while the Iranian highlands held timber, stone, and metals that the cities of the plain desperately needed. But trade easily turned to war. For century after century, Elam and the powers of Mesopotamia fought over land, cities, and dominance in one of the longest rivalries in human history. One of the most distinctive things about the Elamites is their language, because it stands completely alone. Elamite is what scholars call a language isolate. It is not related to the Semitic languages of Mesopotamia, like Akkadian. It is not related to the Indo-European languages, like Persian, that would later come to dominate the region. As far as we can tell, it is related to nothing else that survives. The Elamites first used picture-based writing of their own, and later adopted the wedge-shaped cuneiform script from Mesopotamia to write their unique tongue. Because Elamite has no close relatives to compare it against, parts of it remain difficult to fully understand even now. A people who can still partly hide behind their own language thousands of years later is a rare thing. The Elamites were also extraordinary artists and builders, and this is what they are most admired for today. They were master metalworkers in bronze and other metals. One of the most stunning objects to survive from the entire ancient Near East is a near life-sized bronze statue of an Elamite queen named Napir-Asu, cast with such skill and weighing so much that it is a marvel of ancient engineering. The Elamites filled their temples with finely modeled figures, glazed bricks, and carved reliefs in a style that is recognizably their own, neither fully Mesopotamian nor like anything that came after. Their crowning architectural achievement still stands in the Iranian desert. Around the 13th century BCE, an Elamite king built an enormous stepped temple tower, a ziggurat, at a site called Chogha Zanbil. It was raised in honor of their chief god, and it remains one of the best preserved ziggurats anywhere in the world, a mountain of mud brick rising from the plain. The Elamites had a rich religion of their own, with their own gods and goddesses served by powerful priests, and they often placed female deities and royal women in prominent positions, something that stands out compared to many of their neighbors. For all their art, The Elamites were also a formidable military power, and at their height, they did something remarkable. They struck at the very heart of Mesopotamia and won. In the 12th century BCE, an Elamite king marched into Babylonia and carried off as plunder some of the most sacred monuments of the ancient world. Among them was the famous stone stele, carved with the law code of Hammurabi, the celebrated Babylonian king, and a statue of Babylon's chief god, Marduk. The Elamites hauled these treasures back to Susa as trophies of victory. It is partly thanks to this act of ancient looting that Hammurabi's law code survived at all, to be rediscovered in Susa by archaeologists thousands of years later. Elam, at that moment, was arguably the dominant power of the region. But power on that scale invites enemies, and Elam's greatest enemy was the empire of Assyria. The Assyrians were among the most relentless military powers of the ancient world, and in the 7th century BCE, they turned their full force against Elam. After long and brutal wars, the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal stormed and sacked the great city of Susa. By his own boastful account, his soldiers tore down its temples, looted its treasures, and even disturbed the tombs of its ancient kings, deliberately trying to erase Elam from history and break its spirit forever. It was one of the most devastating blows any ancient civilization suffered. And here is where the story takes a turn that almost no one expects. Even this did not truly end Elam. The civilization was battered, but its culture and people lived on, especially in the highlands. And in those same highlands, a new people had been settling for generations: the Persians, an Indo-European group migrating into the region. The Persians did not arrive in an empty land. They grew up beside the Elamites, and they absorbed an enormous amount from them. When Cyrus the Great founded the Persian Empire in the 6th century BCE, his own homeland was Anshan, the old Elamite highland heartland. The early Persian kings used the Elamite language in their administration. Elamite scribes helped run the new empire. Elamite art, dress, and royal traditions flowed into Persian culture. In a very real sense, the mighty Persian Empire was built on Elamite foundations. So when did Elam end? The traditional date is 539 BCE, when the last independent fragments were folded fully into the Persian Empire of Cyrus the Great. But notice what kind of ending that is. Elam was not wiped out, it was inherited. Its rival of 2,000 years, Mesopotamia, fell to the same Persian conquest. Elam, by contrast, did not so much die as dissolve into the very empire that would carry its legacy forward and rule the largest territory the world had yet seen. That is the strange fate of the Elamites. They have no monuments in our popular memory, no famous kings everyone can name, no place in the usual story of ancient history. They were overshadowed first by the Mesopotamians, who wrote about them mostly as enemies, and then by the Persians, who quietly built upon them. But peel back the layers of ancient Iran, and Elam is there at the bottom, holding everything up. The first great civilization of the Iranian world, the keeper of a language all its own, and the silent partner in the rise of Persia. To forget the Elamites is to mistake the foundation of a house for empty ground. The house of ancient Iran was standing on them all along.